This is Hunt Nebraska, the official podcast for insight into Nebraska's hunting and shooting sports community. Be sure to give us a follow on Facebook, our space for sharing stories, information, tips, and techniques. Now, Hunt Nebraska. And a great morning, afternoon, evening to all the folks out there. Listen, that's right. We got to get ready. We just kind of ran into the cabin here.
We kind of did. This is kind of a spur of the moment deal.
I'm not sure those are plugged in. Well, I'm Hershy. That's Jeff, both with your Nebraska Game and Parks Commission. And we've got our good buddy once again from the National Wild Turkey Federation, Michael Addison, running the boards, launching the program and all that type of stuff. Now I
want people to know how this got started. We just came out of a heated discussion about ground blinds.
Started with decoys.
It started with decoys and some of the turkey
battle.
Research that we will talk about again in the near future. Some of that turkey research that's going on that's just blowing our minds really on some of the things we're learning about turkeys. Cool stuff. Going to change, revolutionize how we hunt, I think. But we got in this heated discussion about ground blinds, and we thought, yeah, let's just get in there and talk.
We literally ran.
Didn't imagine you were so anti-ground blind, Jeff.
Well, I'm anti a lot of things, Hershy.
Yeah.
First thing I'm anti about is talking about the stuff I'm anti about, Hershy. But it's a heated discussion.
I've got issues, and I'm going to let you know.
That's right. It was good, and I thought we all started thinking, let's get in the studio and capture this because ground blinds just capture the heart and imagination of hunters.
If you haven't figured it out yet, we're kind of in that turkey mood. The weather is feeling a little bit more turkey-esque all the time. We're starting to see a little bit of green across the great state of Nebraska. We've got a little time before it gets started. I mean, we are still in early March, obviously, but it'll be here before we know it, and we got to prepare. And if you've been bitten by any part, even a little case of turkey fever, you know what we're talking about because the stores, especially the sporting goods stores, have all getting the turkey stuff out. They made the switch from waterfowl and deer to spring camouflage patterns and decoys that you don't buy by the 4-pack or 6-pack. Cost just as much.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But a lot of things going on, and we love turkeys here in the great state of Nebraska. We are still, and I know there's some folks that remember the golden days, Jeff, boy, it was kind of tough. The turkeys would carry you from the house to the truck, and you just see turkeys all the way from the house to the drive to the woods, even at night.
You had to watch where you stepped. You go to the ground blind, you had to watch where you stepped.
Yeah, and now the last few years, obviously, we've had some changes and reductions due to population. I won't say issues because that's not it. Population fluctuations is what it is. Yeah. It's always a response to the habitat and the weather conditions and all that. We're coming out of drought in some areas. Other spots are coming out of, last year, parts of western Nebraska, we had a lot of our state rec areas flooded. Some of our wildlife management areas inaccessible because of that. And so it's always going to be an up and down thing. But I dare say you've had to refine your hunting techniques just a little bit.
I think that's probably a safe statement to make. And it's like all wildlife populations. We in fact, I remember we even said back in 2010, 11, 12 that, populations couldn't stay at this level. This was abnormally high, and they would come back down to a more normal level. They've come back down probably, a little past that normal level. So we're kind of in days right now, still some of the best turkey hunting days we've had in the last 30, 40 years, but not like it was, but so we refined things a little bit, and you put a little more elbow grease into it, maybe.
And we still have a lot of turkey aficionados from outside of Nebraska that just chomping at the bit to get here.
And there's not
sold out fast for non-residents.
We're still one of the best states.
Of them still wanting to come here and enjoy our opportunities and all that type of stuff. If you're thinking about doing it and haven't done it yet, let us warn you, it is addictive. It's a lot of fun. There's a reason that people are willing to spend a little extra time, a little extra money on some of the gadgets, the gizmos, all the things that go around with the turkey hunting, or what you can have for turkey hunting. And Michael, I'm going to leave you out of this question right here because it's completely different for a young guy like you compared to us, slightly more mature turkey hunters, Jeff.
Full figured.
Full figured. I wasn't going there, but figure I guess we will now. When you first started turkey hunting, and you heard the word blind, what did you think of?
Well, I'd never had a blind, when I first started turkey hunting. So, when I first started turkey hunting, a blind was, we had these little saws that we brought with us.
Yeah.
A little folding pack saw and drywall saws that were folding drywall saws, kind of worked good. And we'd get up like to a cedar tree and open up that saw from your vest. Everything was out of a vest, and kind of a couple lower limbs and kind of stack them out in front there, and then come hide behind them underneath the canopy of that tree, and that was your blind, and that was what a blind was. The idea of packing in a tent type blind was pretty foreign at the time. I remember the first one I hunted out of, and a buddy of mine had bought it at Cabela's at the old one of their basement sale type deals, and it was much like this one right here. To be honest with you, it was a ground blind / tent that you took the rods out of a little bag and you slid them.
Oh, they were separate.
Yeah, they were separate. You had to slide the rods in, and then of course you get inside of it, and the rods kind of held the blind open, and you crawled inside of it. And for two guys, you really needed to be fairly decent friends with the guy you're hunting with, because you're going to be pretty darn close. If you didn't know each other, you would after the morning hunt. But it was, to where we're at today, it was almost a joke. But it was an attempt at the beginning of we took basically tent technology and tried to make ground blinds.
And one of the interesting things is I think some of the homemade blinds that I remember what you could buy commercially were from bow hunters. They were oftentimes folks that knew that they needed to kind of disguise their draw when a turkey came in, which was pretty darn difficult when you're sitting at the base of a tree, which a lot of archers did back then. They'd try to get the base of a tree and sometimes behind it rather than in front of it, like a lot of shotgunners did. And so they'd build different things, different little accordion type things. Like you said, some tents, different things that they would, knowing that they weren't going to be able to run and gun, so to speak, but they were going to, all right, I'm going to stay put here, or this is a good spot, I've seen them strutting, I'm going to set up here long before they get there and wait for them out. And they had some success. But, and again, you start looking at the commercial available ones, and there were some things out there, but it really caught fire when a couple of bow hunters, I think out of Minnesota, kind of stumbled on a couple of things. One, the hub system that we all know and love,
revolutionized it.
That kept the poles right there with the blind itself, and provided some material that when you pop those hubs out, no little breeze was going to be blowing that blind around, so you didn't get a lot of flap. Also, they stumbled on, and this would be interesting to know the whole story behind the black interior of a blind.
That was, again, kind of the evolution of the ground blind.
Because who would have thought that, well, you got to be camouflaged, turkeys can see colors, and there was a turkey camouflage revolution going on that started what we know today as well. But if we do all the things black and the people inside wear dark colors, that they can't see you. I mean, there's a whole bunch of folks that were early on in the turkey trap and transfer program that would have loved to know that, rather than sitting inside a camouflage little box blind without, little itty bitty windows, just so they could see their eyes through and all that. So it really changed things up. And from there, it just caught fire. Now they're everywhere.
Yeah, without question. Of course, blinds continue to evolve, and it's pretty interesting to see how they've evolved now, because one thing key about the blind, once we learned that we need to make it out of better material, material that's a little thicker, denier or whatever, that's going to stand up to abrasion, because you're going to have blind setting up in trees, up against cedar trees, out in the middle of a field in the sun, whatever. And so we started realizing that. We started realizing, okay, we need better windows. But then we started realizing, the black interior hunter's hide. What's the preferred camouflage of a turkey hunter today? It's got to be black, because at least from the torso up, everybody's wearing black, because you can sit inside of a blind, you just disappear. Now, then the evolution started going, well, geez, we got all these blind spots, right? It's just not conducive to seeing everywhere. And so now we've got blinds that the panels themselves are the window, that see-through mesh. And even that is starting to evolve. I think some of that early see-through mesh, if the sun's really shining behind you, they could pick up movement inside. And now we're starting to get some mesh that doesn't allow them to see in at all, so to pick up that movement. And it's interesting. You ever go to Shields or Cabela's and they got them set up, and you go sit inside one of those blinds. It's like people are walking by and you can see everybody. but they're not even looking in the blind because it's just, you're
just a ground blind.
Yeah, just a ground blind sitting there. Yeah. And so that in itself is pretty cool. But there's all kinds of must-haves, not must-haves, changes that were good, changes that were kind of meh, and I think some of those are interesting.
Well, and I will say that I don't spend all my time turkey hunting. I don't know that any of us do sitting here inside a blind. It's not a gotta have in all situations. It opens up some spots, and living here in Nebraska, especially as you go west, you find out there's not a lot of trees in every turkey hunting spot to lean up against or hide in or something. If you got some cedars like you were talking about, Jeff, oh my goodness, if you can find a comfortable cedar, there's not many better hides when it comes to turkey hunting. However, you find those birds that are in the middle of that pasture. You find those birds that are away from trees or out there on the rolling hills of southwest Nebraska or out from the pines there in the northwest. And so it opens up some opportunities where before you probably weren't turkey hunting in some of those spots. And in an open state like Nebraska, that can be a good thing. Yeah. It's also, folks, I'll say it's taken it from, I would have told you turkey hunting is probably one of the last things to try if you're a new hunter, because how still you had to be and how patient you had to be and how tricky those birds were to get within shotgun range, because that's what you're doing. You're trying to get them within that, that magical 30 yards for shotgun, maybe 20 yards and under for archery. And now it's kind of like, boy, because of these silly blinds, is there a more comfortable thing to be doing in the springtime than turkey hunting?
Then that was the next evolution, right? We had impeccable blinds. I mean, and just some incredible blinds. But now we're not quite comfortable in those blinds. So now we had to evolve really blind chairs. Yeah, and I mean, today it's everything but a lazy boy. I mean, you can pop your feet up, lay back, and take a nap. Oh. So blind chairs are pretty darn important now.
Have you heard this? A couple of years ago, Jeff, how were you picking the chairs for your blinds? Do you remember this?
Well, that I could lay back and take a nap.
Yeah, if it had a pillow.
Well, I like chairs. It's funny. I've mastered the art, the tripod chair. Remember, we had the small tripod chairs, and then all of a sudden somebody realized
I still have one attached to me somewhere.
Yeah, we need big tripod chairs. And I have mastered the art of setting that tripod chair up in my blind. I still hunt out of a tripod chair a lot. And then mastering that so that the two legs behind you can lean back and the front leg comes off and you're leaning up against the back of the blind. And I have snored away hours in the turkey blind doing that. Now, one of these days that thing's going to break and I'm just going to go everywhere. But
I hope I'm there when that happens.
Oh God! But pretty comfortable. And then of course, some of the lounge type chairs that you'd want around the campfire are now that I put in my ground blind and just sitting there. It's
they do make camouflage lazy boys, so there's that.
There is that.
Yeah, is that. And I don't even care about the color of the chair because when I get in there, I've got a fleece blanket, a black fleece blanket that I sit over the chair, and then I lay back in.
Over the chair. Okay.
Oh, yeah. Well, I put it around me too on cold days, and then of course, with the advent of buddy heaters, and now all of a sudden the blind is like a little castle in there. I mean, it doesn't matter how cold it is, you get in there. So there's just so many, the evolution continues on, which is kind of cool. They'll be coming with plumbing here not too long.
Which kind of gets into what we're going to chat about here in just a bit about blinds and what we bring to them. But Michael, you've been turkey hunting for many years as well. Do you remember a time when portable ground blinds weren't a thing though? Turkey hunting?
No, I've always, whenever I first started with my dad, we hunted out of something not too much different than that right there. A little
doghouse design.
Yep.
The old doghouse design.
Your little pop up tent looking blind that, when it's just dad and a boy or dad and two boys, when my brother still hunted with us, that would work. Now as I got older and older, there got to be less and less and less space. Yep. And so we upgraded to a hub blind eventually. But no, that's what I started out turkey hunting in.
You bring up an excellent point. I know that my wife and I got a lot of spring turkey hunts that we wouldn't have been able to go on when our kids were little, because like you said, we just tossed them in the blind. They had a blanket like Jeff did to lay on and color in their books, do things, play games, eat chocolate donuts, whatever it was. That wasn't happening. And we had a lot of successful hunts where there was a bird shot or two. So a lot of good things. So now the question that we kind of came running into the cabin with, folks, like these two gentlemen were talking about from our earlier conversation and debate, was what is it that you've got to have in a blind? What is the one thing that you, or two things we'll say, that you take to a blind? Because we're going to get into a bunch. that, hey, that's what makes the hunt for me, or it's because I can hunt out of a blind that this is why I take that. And Jeff, you already mentioned chairs. I mean, so that
chair is probably one of the more important things. A comfortable chair, you'll sit all day and relax and enjoy the show. An uncomfortable chair, and you're just hidden uncomfortably.
What were they thinking about when we first started out with those little, like you said, itty bitty little tripod stools that just like, it doesn't even.
I think they were thinking at least one of your cheeks was going to be happy. But they aren't both going to be happy on one of those things. Let me tell you.
I'm not sure that that's the way it works, though, Michael. It's kind of they're either both.
I think
both
when
happy
one's
or,
unhappy, both are unhappy.
Kind of splits the cheeks right down the middle.
Yeah, it's
uncomfortable at best. And then the bigger ones, and now all of a sudden,
well,
you got a chair,
and not just bigger in size, which definitely helped, but bigger in the foot. Because I remember some of those first ones just had this little itty bitty, like somebody tested them on concrete, right? And then you take them out in that soft soil here in eastern Nebraska after a good rain, and you pop up the blind, you sit in, and all of a sudden you realize that window's getting taller. And my knees, I don't remember those knees brushing my nostrils that often, but you just sink right in. Yeah. And then you pick it up and move over, just like, oh my goodness.
Spade foots are important.
I'm in the balcony now, this blind, and you sink back down again. So that is huge. And they made them portable. They've made some of those chairs ones that, hey, I'm driving my blind in, I might as well drop my chair off as well. But yeah, you can pick your own comfort. You can pick your own, portability as well. So a lot of different options there. They've changed the materials, like you've said, Jeff, as well. A little canvas with a little bit of open cell foam doesn't do a whole bunch compared to some of those kind of sling styles that we have now.
So a chair is critical.
Yeah, you got to have it.
A good chair.
How many have hunted out of a ground blind even when you forgot the chairs?
Oh, I have. That's not fun. Yeah, that's miserable.
That's just a roll in the
miserable. I know is a relative term, but when you're planning to be out there all day long and you're basically on your knees, popping up, looking, oh man, that's no fun. So a chair is number one. What's the next best thing you have to have out in the blind?
I'd say a shooting stick is a good thing to bring to the blind.
Definitely have used that more.
Depending on the blind. There are some blinds. I've hunted out of blinds that have that zipper that goes right down the middle of the window, and you can rest your shotgun barrel right there on that zipper.
Yeah.
But if you hunt out of one of those that doesn't have that, then having a shooting stick's
I have used shooting sticks more out of ground blinds now than I ever thought I was going to for a couple of reasons. One is because we talked about a couple of weeks ago, and folks, you can listen to that one as well on our Gauging Gobblers podcast, is these guns, we've always kind of shot these shotguns more like rifles when it comes to turkey hunting, because the target's usually not moving much. We're trying to hit a really small area, and we just, for some reason, feel the urge to really squeeze as many pellets into that little head, neck area as we possibly can. And so our shooting stick, or our shooting device, our shotgun, is shooting more like a rifle. Mm-hmm. Well, when you shoot a rifle, you use shooting sticks. You have some type of rest. It also helps when you're taking somebody newer or smaller out there, because sometimes those turkeys do turkey things, and just when you think at that moment of truth it's going to happen, they duck, they get behind a hen, they do all sorts of different things. And shotguns were never fun to hold out with your forearm and holding, they might be a 7-8 pound gun, and you've got most of it out there on your offhand trying to stay kind of steady. And so it gets you ready. One of the things you talked about quite a bit, Jeff, when it comes to deer hunting is we don't get ready soon enough. We're not ready when that deer comes in and pops out in front of us. We need to be on the shooting sticks. We need to be ready to go rather than, oh, there's a deer, I better get my gun. Turkeys, at times, that helps as well. And if you've got some youngsters out there that aren't used to holding that weight, or some folks that don't like holding that weight, there you go. Yeah. And it's exciting, right?
I'm not a big shooting stick guy, but when it comes to shotguns, but I do know, especially for bow hunting for turkeys, and I bow hunt every year for turkeys, a bow holder that sticks in the ground or hangs from the ceiling and holds the bow is huge for me. When I don't have those, because I always want to leave my bow nocked with an arrow, ready to go, right? And if you've got to lean it against the wall of the blind, not only is that dangerous, but how many times have you guys had a bow slip and fall, and then the arrow hits the tip of the blind?
Razor sharp.
Yeah, cuts a hole in the blind.
Cuts it right open.
And so, something to hold the bow ready to go. So all I got to do is pick up the bow.
Less movement. It's already vertical. Now I can grab, like you said, clip in if you got to release and go. So that's a good one. You guys already mentioned the buddy heaters. I know I've been out in some weather I probably wouldn't have been turkey hunting in if it wasn't for that little buddy heater inside a blind, whether it's keeping me dry and the heater's keeping me warm, or it's the heater's helping dry me off from the wet walk in. Huge to have. And the nice thing is turkeys don't have a sense of smell.
Yep.
So, and deer don't seem to be phased by those buddy heaters from what I've seen. And so, hey, start it up, off you go. Now, I do warn you that there's times I think in the dark blind, and you got this red glow on your white face, there are times they can see that face. Now you've added a little bit of illumination. Not a lot, but during those dark hours, if it's nice and calm or something like that, they come flying down early or they're up in that tree, they can see a little bit more movement in there. Can't say that it's ever, affected the outcome of a hunt, but it is one of those things that it just, even looking back at when the heater's on, I can see faces bobbing around. And
that's why they make ski masks.
There you go.
Well, there's something to be said about that. One of the things that I attribute this, one of the few things that came out of COVID that I still use is everybody had to go buy masks, right? And I hated some masks, but I'd like some of those that I could just put up over, just put up over.
We had to be connoisseurs, didn't we?
Well, we did.
This is what I like in my mask.
All of a sudden, we had masks, designer masks, and everything. And but those kind of cheap nylon-y kind of masks that kind of like a neck gaiter, but they had a mask face piece to them that you could pull over your face and it flipped over your ears, but it was only a half shell. Those in black. I've got several of those that I take to the blind with me, and you just wear them around your neck. And then all of a sudden, you got a gobbler coming in, just pull it up over your face, and now your face is pretty hidden.
Which on a side note, do you guys still have a mask left over from the pandemic that you hold? Jeff, obviously you do for the blind. Michael, do you?
I used my turkey hunting face mask. That's what I used. So, yes, I still have it.
I got to say,
I use it every spring.
I've got a kind of a silver gray camo one that I enjoyed, and I got it because if I got to use it again, that's when I'm going to. All the rest of them have been kind of
I still
sick,
got quite
so to speak. But it is a good point. So what else do you guys bring to the blind? Because there's a lot of room in these things. I mean, you fit not only a couple people, but you can the chairs, the decoys, a bark lounge or whatever. What else are you putting in there?
One of the things I bought years ago that I really like is a little shelf that fits on the hub rods, and it just kind of fits behind them and holds on to them with two hooks, and the shelf comes down, and it's not very big, but it's got a cup holder and then a little shelf with an edge around it. And I can tell you, I can put a pop in there, I can put calls on there, I can put cigars on there. I mean, it's got everything that I might want access to.
Now, is this a blind that doesn't move much during the spring turkey season?
It does not move much during the spring season. I have places that I know where I'm going to intercept birds, and so sometimes I have to, but not always. And so when I get them set up, a lot of times I want that blind sitting out there, pretty much as long as I want to hunt. And I know that some people just go, oh God, doing that, but
got to have more than one blind.
Well, yeah, I do.
I've got one or two spots, like you said. For some reason, this is where turkeys just like being most of the time, most springs. But I've got a couple extra in the back. Like, all right, we're going over here. We're going to hit this spot, and right now they're using this corner of that field or that WMA, whatever it is. Boom, I've got one to go. Yeah. So I've got light ones, I've got heavy ones, so that I can.
But it doesn't matter what blind you got. Throw those dumb stakes away that come with a blind and get you a good set of stakes. Now, I know you like to bolt them in with big old lag
That's
screws.
When the ground's frozen with lag bolts.
But I can tell you right now, just a good set of tent stakes, heavy-duty tent stakes. And I've really not had a lot of problem with, I stake off the hubs. So you got 4 hubs going around, and those hubs that kind of pull out from the center of each panel, and I'll have a rope going off those hubs, and I stake down from those hubs, and I've had very little problem. Now, if I'm going to leave that blind up, all season long, I'll put 4 stakes in the corners, and then I'll put the hub stakes in, and that thing isn't going anywhere if it's the right design.
You always have to have a stake by the door. because you got to provide a little extra resistance, whether it's a zipper, whether it's the, the little snaps or the buckles or whatever. You got to have some resistance. So I always put one there. I will say there is a blind company that still it comes with good stakes. Most of them, like you said, Jeff, they're just those little aluminum ones. Yeah. But if they've got a wing on them, I do like those, especially for the corners, because then it catches that little D loop or little triangle loop or whatever they have in there and catches it and gives it a little bit more space. But I am definitely with you. Stake it down. If it's going to be a blind, especially that is going to be there throughout the spring, go with good camp stakes. I've even sometimes used some things. I've used this for my muzzleloader blind in the winter here in Nebraska. Some dog fang or wolf fang anchors is what they're called. They're actually used in trapping. Drive them down, you pull them up, and they kind of turn parallel with the surface and bite in, and they will not blow away. Now, I will say, do you do anything for the center of your hub? Because every once in a while, that center hub, nothing's supporting it up there. And if you get the right wind or the blind's material is getting a little stretch to it, it'll drop down, and all of a sudden now you've got a funnel when it rains, and you're at the bottom of it on the inside.
I don't. Yeah. I don't have a problem with that.
But I can't say I've ever had that issue.
I know they make a rod that fits from the hub down to the ground that you can adjust the height and keep that tension on it, but I don't.
For some of our new hunter events, we've had to put 2x4s in there to help keep it up. But it is something that most of the time I haven't, but I'm going to probably start using it more as my blinds
in the winter
aged.
I do. In the winter, if I'm leaving a blind out, like during muzzleloader season, a lot of times I'll put a 2x4. You mentioned that. I've done that where I put a 2x4 and kind of wedge it up under in there. And I'll tell you right now, for snow load, that really works well. That's a good idea.
This is one it doesn't matter whether it's in the blind where I probably use it more than anything, but also in the vest. And I've mentioned it before. I grabbed the rangefinder out of my archery hunting stuff from the fall from being up in the tree stand, and I take it with me into the blinds. One, it does a few things. Again, a lot of times where I'm using blinds, folks, is in open areas where it's a little hard. We talked about it again in that last podcast. As far as in open areas and fields, it can be difficult sometimes to gauge how far turkeys are, especially for those that don't hunt them a lot. And so this is a nice thing where, just like we talked about before, ranging where the decoys, all right, that's how far. Or if you've got two of them folks sitting in there, it's kind of nice for that other hunter. You got one that's going to shoot and one that's kind of okay. They're within 30 yards. Okay. Yep. Now is the time. Oh, sure, they're at 8 yards. You might not want to do that. Or it's kind of fun too. It's again, hunting. Patience is one of the virtues, right? And you can go out there and it's like, man, that hen is at 3 foot. And you can range it. Yep, 1 yard, and all types of stuff. How far is that?
Because you need to have that range on. Yep, it's exactly 1 yard.
I think if that hen's 1 yard away, you're not doing anything.
Settles a bet. How far is that deer? Because we all get, isn't it funny in the fall? We just love seeing deer when we got the bow in the hand, we're sitting there deer hunting or the rifle. In the spring, it's just kind of like, oh, that's kind of neat. There's a deer. Yeah, that's cool. There's another deer. Oh, there's a nice deer. Oh, and then by the 15th one, you're thinking, it's another stinking deer. Yeah. So it's kind of fun. Like, all right, how far do you think that deer is? Well, we got the rangefinder right here, Michael. What do you think? Oh, I think he's 125. No, I think he's 140. Now you can figure it out and have some fun with it too.
Well, and the one thing that none of us have said, but we wouldn't think about going out into the blind without is our cell phones. And I always bring my cell phone.
I'd love to leave that behind.
Well, you don't though, because it's got everything you can play.
It's got my permit on it now.
Yep, your permit plus all the footage. I mean, you and we've got so much video footage and imagery of our hunts, and it's just cool as heck to watch. Hens come in and beat up the decoys, or jakes come in and you're taking pictures. So many toms that I've got video and pictures of before I've shot them, coming in and strutting and whatnot. So, and then of course that phone, you can rest, you can sleep, you can enjoy nature, but gosh,
you can rest, you can sleep.
By the 8th, 9th week of the season,
you can snooze.
You've had
a
lot
nap.
of nature, and so sometimes you're on your phone, and you're it might just keep you out in the field that much longer.
I agree, as long as you're not checking email.
But I do that too. That's
not
a
the
negative.
place for it.
Take work with you. But it is one of those things that I talked about with our kids. They had coloring books, they had books that they read, they had different activity things. It's the same with us. The longer you're able to stay out there, the more like, especially if you're done your scouting, you've done your homework, birds are going to come by at some point.
So one thing I'm interested for you guys is with all the blinds out there, what are top 2, top 3 must-haves in the design of the blind? What are the top must-haves. Now, the black interior, that's a standard, right? I mean,
you think so? There are blinds,
but if they don't have a black interior, they haven't thought it out.
I'm with you there. There are some blinds that you could buy the last few years at one of our major sporting goods stores. It was all camouflage on the inside, and I haven't figured out the idea there yet because I'm sold on the black.
Yeah, but what's a must-have?
I can tell you what I absolutely will not stand for to having a blind.
I'm kind of there too.
Is Velcro anything?
Oh,
my gosh.
I had a blind. So I had a blind like that where I won't name the brand, but you can buy them at Walmart. And
sounds like
I like the camo pattern on it a lot and everything else. We go and set up, and the door is Velcro and the windows, and there's nothing worse than you're trying to sneak into your blind there before first light, and you go to get the window down the direction you think will be coming from, and just Velcro noise everywhere, and it's I can't.
Some of the early ones that Velcro was very common.
Yep.
And I don't know how many turkeys it saved. I know it in my own hunts with friends and family and stuff like that. The Velcro window saved a lot of gobblers.
Oh, I agree.
So I can't imagine. Probably hundreds of thousands of
silent windows.
Silent windows.
Whether they're magnetic or they're on a slide or whatever.
I like on the double bull blinds. They've got that little it's like a cylinder almost, and it's got those elastic loops.
Yeah.
I really like that system, how that works. So that's kind of what I prefer nowadays.
So silent windows.
That's a good point.
That's a must-have.
I'm going to go the same way, but I'm going to try to spin it positively. I want solid material.
Yeah.
I know the craze right now is see-through stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not bought into it.
Yeah.
I have not bought into it. I haven't yet seen, like you said, it looks good on the store, but under fluorescence light straight above, great. But my blinds do, folks, a lot of double duty. I mean, these are the same blinds that if I take them out for muzzleloader season, if I take them out for who knows what, if I start early archery season for turkey when, 18 degrees has probably been the coldest I've been out on a turkey hunt. I don't want any even thought of a breeze coming through
or hot air leaving the blind, right?
Exactly. I want that to stay in there.
I'll go to another point. You're talking about using them in multiple seasons. A versatile camo pattern. I don't want something. I don't want something that's super green when I'm hunting early season. But then early season I've had one that like a fall camo, like some orange and browns and stuff. But I don't want that blind out there come May. And with our blinds, out at the farm where we hunt. We usually pick a spot and it sits there for the whole season, so it's not one we're moving around a lot. So something that's, maybe got some, a little bit of green in it, but also some stuff that blends in with the branches and the trees, some of your browns and tans and things like that it's going to work, throughout the entire season and maybe even into the fall if you're using it there too.
Now you're pretty particular in your camouflage on your blind.
I wasn't until here not too a few years ago, and because for turkeys I'm not. I think when it comes to a blind, camo for turkeys. For deer, on the other hand, I'm kind of sold on that. I remember one year up in the Pine Ridge, and one of the blinds I had sitting out there, the first one that I started with for that week, and it seemed like deer were just skirting it. They'd come out, they'd just eating and looking at it, put their head down, look back up at the blind. And I'm not moving. I mean, I know how to hunt out of a ground blind. I'm just sitting there going, man, they are just bothered by this blind. So I took it down and I put my old standby, which is a double bull blind, up, and came into the field the next day myself from the bottom of the field. I couldn't see the blind. I couldn't find the blind, and I knew it was up in the corner of the field. I mean, it's only a few hundred yards from me, and I'm looking, and I'm trying to find the blind because there's big pines, ponderosas behind the blind, a hill and some ponderosas, and I couldn't see the blind. As I got within about 100 yards, I could start to see, oh yeah, there it is. And then when the rest of the week hunting out that blind, it was just amazing. Deer would walk out in that field, never even give it a look.
See, and I think especially with deer, breaking up that outline where it doesn't get silhouetted is huge. I
think there's something to that.
Now, I always figured it was marketing. I liked it early on. You heard a lot of manufacturers saying, hey, this is a ground blind specific camouflage pattern. And it might be bigger. It might be more open. It might be all that type of stuff. And there were some neat things that came out. I think they hit a nice, sweet note because early on, Jeff, some of those blinds, it seemed like deer pick out no matter where you put them.
Agreed.
You almost had to cover them completely with whatever, leaves and branches and grasses and stuff just to make them disappear to where they'd kind of accept them. And then we got to a point where I've got some blinds deer, doesn't matter what season, they care less about them for the most part, as long as they're not skylined. But I will say I kind of took a step back the last 2 years. I've got a blind, a little smaller blind, a little cheaper blind, still a hub style blind, and it's in one of the more popular camel patterns, one of the more original camel patterns that has regained popularity as well, and one that I kind of like, especially more now as it's considered retro or old school than I probably did when it was first out there, because we kind of chose sides, right? You remember that, Jeff? Are you a tree bark man? Are you a real tree?
Yeah.
Are you a mossy oak? You got to choose a side. It was like religion. And now it's kind of like, oh, that's kind of cool. I've got that blind in that pattern. I think it kind of looks neat, but I haven't had a lot of success with that blind. And it's been in some spots where I know there's been good turkeys. We've had turkeys come almost within shotgun range of it, but it's almost kind of like you were talking about with the deer, Jeff. It's kind of like, wait a sec, that's different type thing, where I know and it's pure speculation. You'll never be able to prove one way or the other, folks, but it's kind of like if I would have had one of my old blinds here with that ground blind specific camo, I think I would have shot a bird. Whoever I was with would have taken a bird, but nope, just like, no, it's 50 yards. They're not coming any closer now. They're kind of walking away.
Yeah.
And they don't spook from it, but it's just kind of...
Just something there that they don't
like.
like.
But it does. It's a neat camo pattern, but in this big of thing, in a ground blind size, it's just like, yeah, I can kind of see it. It doesn't quite... It blends in, but it doesn't blend in. I don't know how else to describe it.
I think there's so many camo patterns out there that we tried to, for a while, get so detailed with the camo pattern that to us, it's like you're standing there looking at it and going, leaves and bark and branches and sky, that's cool. And but you look at it from 50 yards out, it's a blob. It's just there's no definition to it whatsoever. What this does. And so, I've noticed that with some of those ground blind patterns, that some of those patterns, they look kind of old school, but they just blend. And some of them that look like, oh yeah, you don't see a lot of ground blinds these days that have the same mossy oak real tree or the mossy oak whatever, that we might wear on our person on the blind itself, because they just kind of, and they're good camo patterns, but on a big blind, they just look like a big blob sometimes.
We've taken one gobbler out of that, Michael, and it was one that circled around and came up behind us to where they couldn't see the blind until they were 30 yards away.
Yep.
But it's kind of a neat blind, though, because it's got kind of that window, that 180. I love 180 windows.
Oh, I do. I'm a big fan of the 180.
And it's got one where I like mesh. There's some people that don't like mesh in their ground blinds. I like, especially when the sun's shining in, I can kind of pull it up. This one's got see-through mesh that you can see through pretty well, and then when you pull it up, it's kind of that one-way stuff.
Well, I get lazy with the mesh because I'm not a big fan of having a big panel of mesh in the clamshell, in the opening, in the window. I don't mind it. And so what I do is I take that mesh and just kind of stream it through the window and out and in and out, and so it just breaks. So there's not just this big open clamshell; it just breaks up that opening, and I really like that, especially for gun hunting. Now for archery hunting, I like a vertical windows, and see that's the difference between some of these blinds. A lot of them are horizontal, and for archery, I like vertical windows, and that's something to keep in mind as well.
There's some that come with a mix of both, though, which is good.
And I like that come with a mix of both. And I like a ceiling window. Because it vents heat,
a vent,
the vent in the ceiling.
Yep. Unzip that.
Yeah, you can unzip that now. Of
Agreed.
Course, some of the older blinds, the double bulls certainly have those. My Zenic has those, but blinds that I've hunted with that don't have them, man, when you start getting in the late season, and this year late season might be the middle of April, but yeah, the sun's beating down and it's hot, and oh my gosh, it just bakes you sometimes.
See, most of the blinds I've had haven't had that, and this most recent double bull that we got has that, so it's kind of a new
just
feature
a little
for
vent.
me.
You don't got to open much and let a light in, but just a little bit, open that triangle up, that patch, and a little vent. Oh my gosh!
All right, we've got just a few minutes here, folks. Let's go. Your one tip that you would give anybody that's either hunted in a blind for a long time that maybe they haven't thought of, or even if they're new, this would be a good thing. One tip that's going to make their experience in a blind more comfortable, more successful, more productive, whatever. And then also, after we talk about that, I want to know, because Now in these blinds, you can take snacks to these blinds and munch away and still be turkey hunting. It's not like when we're sitting at the base of a tree, right? It's like once you pull out the chip bag, you know we're not hunting for now. If something happens, it's because that turkey needs to be taken out of the gene pool type thing. But you're still hunting in these things. So tip first, and then also think about, we'll go around the second time, and what's your go-to snack for in a ground blind? So we'll start with a tip, and I'll start it off because this is one thing that popped in my head. It's dark in those blinds in the morning, folks, and in some spots that I hunt, there is open fields, and there's where the trees, the few trees that are there, that's where they roost. And so I don't like hunting in the middle of a crop field. I just don't. I've had success there, but I just doesn't feel like turkey hunting me.
Field edges.
And so I get to the field edges, so I got to get to those blinds pretty early so they don't see me walking across this bean stubble field. There's not a lot of camouflage there, even if you're rolling. I've tried it. So you got to get there early. So you get inside of a black blind in the dark, and it is
slimming, very slimming.
It is just like
slimming.
you can't see. You can wave your fingers in front of your nose and you can feel the wind, but you're not going to see it. So we found out that they make these little glow sticks. Now you can get the ones they use at Halloween that snap and it glows a little bit, but you can't turn those off. But they do make a version of that now, battery operated, that you click a button and it just gives off a nice little yellow glow there, and you stick it right up there by that top hub, and it doesn't make it bright in there, but it's better than having a bright flashlight flashing around inside. And then you can get settled. You can get your shotgun over in the corner. You can get your vest put. You can where you need it. You can get your favorite calls and set them exactly right where you want them. And then click it off and let the world wake up. Wonderful thing for getting out there.
Well, I'll say this, and this is probably a no-brainer for most people who hunt out of blinds, and so this probably goes without saying, but for the novice,
but you're going to say it.
I'm going to say it anyway, and that is minimize your window openings. Turkeys, deer pick you off so easily. Of course, anything behind you needs to be closed. You need to have black behind you. The windows are closed, not just little gaps, but closed. On the sides, I like to have a little bit of gaps. I like to have the windows kind of open, but in an unorthodox way so that you can kind of peek through little triangles or what have you, but you're not letting a lot of light in. And then the front, I like to have that pretty wide open in terms of whatever I'm shooting. If it's a shotgun, doesn't need to be much. If it's a bow, quite a bit. And I'm going to add this because this is something you taught me, and I'm going to tell you this is cool. Uh-oh. And that is buy a nice silver Sharpie and take it with you to your blind.
Oh, yeah.
And leave it there. Because I don't know how many times now that I've done this over the past 10 years, I suppose, on some of my blinds where whoever's hunting with you signs the blind, and if you harvest a turkey, the date and all that. And it's so cool. You're going to spend a lot more time doing nothing in a blind than you are actually shooting at a bird. It's cool to sit back and go, God, I remember that hunt with so-and-so. God, we had a great time. Or I remember that when my daughter shot that bird. That was a fun time. And so that's cool. But anyway, minimize the windows.
That is neat. All right, Michael.
So this is one that people might not think of a lot, but that is, cut your path out to your blind, especially if you're hunting woods. Back home where I hunt a lot, there's a lot of, you're hunting timber, there's a lot of understory, brushy stuff. Cut out, especially at least around the door, cut out that brush there so you're not making a lot of noise going in and out.
That's a really good one. I do the same thing. If I'm taking a blind out the night before, I'll kind of kick the leaves around so I can sneak in. Again, I'm pretty close at times. That's an awesome thought. All right, snacks. Do you have a go-to snack?
Oh, man, go-to snack? Usually like beef sticks or something for me.
Beef sticks. All right, that's always a good one. Venison jerky, if you've got some venison to make it out of from the fall before. The one that my wife and I attribute a lot of turkeys to, especially when our kids were younger, we call them magical donuts. Those Hostess donuts. Ooh. I'm gonna stray away from my main squeeze, Little Debbie, for this one. It's gotta be Hostess. They gotta be the old fashioned white donut cake donuts with the chocolate dipping. That's the way to go. Now sometimes you can do the powdered sugar, but you got to think what color powdered sugar is. It's white. You're wearing black. So it looks like you got a bad case of dandruff as you're eating those powdered donuts. It just doesn't work. It's probably saved a few turkeys. But those bags are getting smaller, so you sometimes now have to take 2 bags out, and don't forget them in your truck because they do melt. But I don't know how many times we've had a kidnap, waking up, all right, let's go, Mom and Dad, and those donuts have saved the hunt. Uh-huh. They go a little further, and turkeys start, going to the nest, so the gobblers get a little bit more lonely, and all of a sudden stuff's happening. So magic donuts.
Yeah, I like it. I like that. That's good.
And Dr. Peppers don't work in a blind very well. I don't know what it is, but they fizz up. Even just a little time, no matter how you walk to the blind, how well you take care of them, you sit them down, let them set for an hour, you open it up, it's like you've just won the Indy 500.
Well,
and you're spraying all over.
I have learned it's bottled pop. It's
Bottled
when
pop,
when you go to the blind, bottled pop, and that way you can put the lid back on it and throw it in the ground, whatever, and you don't have to worry about it. But I do bring bottled pop. Meat sticks of any kind are a go-to for me, and then almond M&Ms. I like almond M&Ms because you got the almond. You got the chocolate, so you got the sweet, you got a little substance in the almond, so that's good for me.
What was it your hunting buddy always brings? Like a cinnamon brown sugar coated, it's some type of nut.
Yeah, candy coated almonds.
Coated almonds.
And
okay.
His mom is the candy coated almond queen, and she makes these from scratch. And that's kind of a prerequisite. He has to bring those, or I'm not hunting. But anyway, he'll bring a bag of those, and there's just those candy coated almonds. And man, I tell you right now, those will get you through a long part of the day. That's for sure.
There you go. It's part of the fun now of hunting in the ground blinds, being able to snack and stay out there longer. That's the whole idea for part of the use of those. So, folks, if you haven't checked out, not everybody enjoys being in a blind, but I definitely think it opens up some opportunities for where you can hunt as well as who can go hunting with you. It's just a fun place to watch the world pass by, especially when it's the spring turkey wood. So we're going to get into more turkey stuff in the weeks to come because we've got plenty of season ahead of time, and we'll be thinking turkeys, especially when it opens up. So make sure you catch us on a lot of the different things, doing some learn to hunt or learnhunting.org type learn turkey hunting sessions online and Facebook Q&A. So we're just getting started. But until next time.
Hunt Nebraska, brought to you by your Nebraska Game and Parks Commission.